top hat. He's got that nice big top hat on. So I'm going to start my circle towards the top of my page, maybe a little bit closer to the middle. We're only going to be seeing a little bit of the top of the hat because, of course, it's a very big, tall top hat. So I'll say towards the middle of my page here, I'm going to start with a circle about the size of a cutie or a tangerine. You have a lot more space on your page than I do, so feel free to go as big as you would like. But I'm going to lock my wrists, let my shoulder do most of the work here, and go around and around a bunch of times with these circular motions here. Now I am placing down lots of options for myself for this circle. I definitely cannot draw a perfect circle on the first try. So if your circle is not perfect, do not sweat it. It definitely does not need to be. His head is definitely not a perfect circular shape anyway. We're just using this as kind of like a baseline to help us build this vision around. Guys, I cannot lose you on the circle. We have so many more steps. Lock in, please. Let's go ahead and add in our guidelines here. I'm going to start by cutting my circle right in half from top to bottom, and I'm bringing that line outside of the bottom and the top of my circle here, because again, we have features to add on both sides. Now for his eye line, we're going to place it relatively low in the circle. I would say maybe like a quarter of the way up from the bottom here, maybe a little bit less. You just want a lot more space above this line and then below it, standing in that line, going from left to right. Now the first thing that we need to work on is his jawline. Like I mentioned, his head is not a perfect circle because he's got quite a big, long jaw here. He's got what we call a lantern jaw for very confident characters. Now what I want to do is I'm going to measure the size of my circle with my fingers. From the top to the bottom, I'm going to measure that circle. I'm going to drop below the bottom of my circle here, and I'm going to give myself a marker. So that's about how far down I want to bring his chin. So again, measure your circle, drop it underneath your circle, give yourself a marker. That's what we're going to aim for here. On either side of his circle here, I'm going to go right below the guideline and stretch down some lines here, some straight lines, pulling down towards that marker. Not quite all the way, just bringing it down to a little bit above that. These two straight lines on either side. I'm then going to go drop down to that little marker that I placed in, and from that marker up to those straight lines, I'm going to sketch in what look like these parenthesis curves here. So this is us building up his jawline. Now go ahead and pull that line up on either side, creating this kind of curvy V shape here. And that's going to give us the basic shape for his head. But I want to leave everything nice and light for now. We still have a couple of things to add to make this silhouette a little bit more accurate to his face shape. But what I want to do now is start to work on his outfit, his kind of costume that he wears, I guess you could say. And the first thing I want to build up is that top hat of his. I'm going to jump back up to this horizontal guideline. A little bit above that line, I'm going to add in a nice big U shape here. Going right across his face, leaving a tiny bit of space above that guideline. I'm then going to turn this shape into a nice big oval here. So I'm bringing that up above his head, leaving quite a bit of space above the top of my circle. This is going to give us the brim of the hat. We kind of want it to look like he is narrowing his eyes at us, so the brim of the hat is going to be kind of tilted downward, which is why we're bringing it so close to the eye. So if this is the brim of the hat, we got to build up the actual top hat part of his hat here. I'm going to go to the top of the circle, drop just a little bit below it, and add in another U shape here, just stretching a little bit further than his head shape on either side. We want it to be about the width of his head, otherwise it's going to look like it would just fall off the top of his head. You want to make sure it actually looks like it fits here. From that U shape on either side, you want to go ahead and bring up these nice big parenthesis curves. And since his hat is so tall, we're actually not going to see the very top of it. I just kind of want it to look like it almost like fades away into obscurity because of how tall it is. So I'm just kind of extending those lines and not really capping off the very top here. Bringing those nice big parenthesis curves out on the other side, and then flaring them out the further up I get from my sketch. He has a little hat band on his head as well, so I'm going to go right above that first U shape that we created for the top hat section, and add one more big U curve in here to create that little space for the hat band. And before I start to darken anything in, he has a little feather that sticks out of the side of his hat. I'm going to go from the side of the hat band here, and pulling up and over to the right-hand side, I'm bringing out this nice big parenthesis curve here. I'm turning it into what looks like a big candy cane hook almost. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a second candy cane hook, but I'm going to stop this one short. It's not going to go point all the way to the very bottom of the feather because this is the top of the feather, and from the angle we're looking at him at, we're actually going to be seeing a little bit of the bottom of the feather as well. So I'm stopping that curve a little bit early, and then going to the end of the feather and bringing up one more parenthesis curve. So that's going to be a little bit at the bottom of the feather that you'll be able to see. Now that was a lot of steps, so now I want to go ahead and take my time and start to lock some of my lines into place. Now when I say locking in my lines, I just mean I'm going back, adding in a little bit of extra pressure here, pushing down on my pencil, darkening up the lines that I like the most, which was going to help all of those lighter ones fade into the background like I mentioned earlier. Now while we're doing this, I want to talk a little bit about this character and this movie in particular. Do we have any Princess and the Frog fans in the house? Yeah, okay, good. Now this movie is absolutely phenomenal. And this character, Dr. Facilier, I think is definitely one of the coolest Disney villains. I think he has probably one of the best villain songs. There's so many really great Disney villain songs, but I absolutely love his. His is such an earworm to me. Every time I hear it every year, I can never get it out of my head. Now, Dr. Facilier gets a lot of his personality from his voice actor. Does anybody happen to know who voices
Keith David.
Oh, yeah, Keith David. Keith David is a very phenomenal voice actor. If you don't recognize his name, there's another spooky movie that you may have heard him from. If anybody in here has ever seen the movie Coraline, he actually plays the little black cat that accompanies Coraline on her journey. So he's the little black kitty from Coraline. But he's also, I think, oh gosh, I can't remember the specific god that he is in Hercules, but he is a character in Hercules. I'm totally spacing on the exact character that he voices, but he does voice a character in Hercules as well. But yeah, Keith David has an absolutely phenomenal singing voice, right? Very obvious from this song. But yeah, he is a super great voice actor, definitely a very good fit for this character. His voice has so much like hold to it, it just kind of draws you in. Which I think is, of course, a really big part of this character, right? He's supposed to kind of draw you in, and then he kind of tricks you into giving up what you have for someone that you really want. He's kind of like a genie in that way. But this character has a lot of really fun stuff from the development of this film that I love to talk about. One of the main things that I think that is so fascinating about this character in particular is that he was actually originally supposed to have more of an in-depth relationship with another one of the characters from the movie. Now, there's another person in this movie who also uses voodoo magic. Who is that? Mama Odie, right? And originally, in the first version of the script, Mama Odie was supposed to be his mother. They were going to be related. He was supposed to be her son. He was supposed to be kind of her delinquent son in a way. And in the original version of the script, he was actually supposed to have a showdown with Mama Odie. They were going to have a big kind of like voodoo magic battle in the middle of the streets of New Orleans during Mardi Gras. That ended up being a very expensive scene to make, and they realized that they wouldn't be able to fit it into the budget, which is why they ended up having to cut it. But I think about that all the time and how much I really want that scene to be real. I hope that if they ever release some like storyboards or maybe some concept part of it, that maybe we can see what it might have been like. But yeah, I think that's really cool that originally these two characters were supposed to have a little bit more of a relationship. Now, on the top of his hat, he's got a little skull and crossbones. So I started off with like a little oval here, and I added in what looks like an upside-down crown. These like 3 little spikes for like the little teeth of the little skull and crossbones. You don't have to add in a skull and crossbones. You can really add in kind of like any symbol that you would like. Maybe you want to put like a little pumpkin on there, kind of into the Halloween spirit. Maybe you want to put like one of those little voodoo dolls or one of the little masks that he has in his little lair, right? This is like he's got friends on the other side. Totally up to you. But I'll go ahead and add in this little skull face. And I also want to give him some eyes. Now I want to make this skull a little bit more menacing. So I'm going to kind of add in these little ovals that slightly taper inwards to almost give it like an angry effect. I want it to look a little bit more evil here, just kind of reinforcing the fact that this guy may not be the nicest of fellows, right? I'll also go right underneath this skull here, and I'll add in these 2 little parentheses to start off with to build up a little cross of those 2 bones here. And I'll go back and add a little bit of extra thickness to them. And on the ends, to make them look like little bones, I'll add in what look like kind of these like sideways number 3s here. And I'll go ahead and add that on the top and the bottom. And then I'll have the one on the left kind of crossing and right on the right. But you can actually mix that up. It doesn't technically matter here. Now this movie, a lot of the reason why this movie is so fantastic has to do with the directing duo who directed this film, I should say. Now these 2 guys, very talented gentlemen, very definitely Disney legends in terms of all of the stuff that they have worked on. Now their names are John Musker and Ron Clemens. And if you haven't heard their names before, you've probably seen their work. They directed films like The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Great Mouse Detective, Treasure Planet, this film, and Moana, Hercules. They're huge names in the world of Disney. And my favorite thing about these 2 guys is that they love to add in a little Easter eggs to their past films. Now this one, actually I have a picture of it here. It's a very subtle Easter egg from the very beginning of the movie. There's a scene where a woman is beating a carpet like getting the dust out of it, and that carpet is actually carpet from Aladdin. So if you want to go back and watch that, she's like in the far right corner, so she's very tiny. But we do have a little magic carpet in that movie. Another really fun Easter egg is actually one of the floats in the Mardi Gras parade. What character does that look like? King Triton. King Triton, right? Yes, that's supposed to be King Triton from The Little Mermaid. They kind of hide lots of little secrets like that all around. And that's one of my favorite things with Disney films. They always kind of try to hide the little pieces from their other films in their films to kind of bring that back, bring it full circle here. We've got the hat nice and locked into place here. I've added in a little bit of shading to the hat band. The next thing I want to do is start to work on the rest of his outfit. I want to add in his shoulders here. I'm going to go down to his face, a little bit above where these curves kind of meet those straight lines. On either side, I'm going to bring down these little U curves here, just these little slants to create his shoulders. We're going to be seeing a little bit of the top of his jacket that he wears. And underneath, we're going to be seeing a little necklace that he wears as well. So once you have those two curves, those little hills for the sides of his shoulders, about halfway through his chin here on either side, I'm going to bring down some nice big C curves, big parentheses. This is going to be the opening of his jacket, right, the middle part where you can see the shirt underneath, or actually the lap of the shirt underneath, I should say. We're also going to be seeing a little bit of the lapels here on either side, kind of like the little parts of the jacket that fold over here. For those lapels, they look kind of like big lightning bolts to me. I'll go over here and start on this right-hand side. I'll bring down a diagonal line from that same point that I started the little curve for his shoulders. I'll bring that diagonal line about halfway down into those C shapes here. I'll add in a little rainbow that pulls it in towards those C curves. And then I'll add one more C curve here to get the other side of the lapel. And then you want to go ahead and do the same thing on both sides. Now, one other thing that I love about Ron Clements and John Musker is that in every film, they like to hide little caricatures of themselves in their movies. Now, if you've never seen these guys before, one of them is tall and skinny, and one of them is a little bit more short and stout. So they often hide themselves, typically, I would say most often as like sidekick characters. In this movie, they are actually some kind of side characters. They are the two gentlemen who sell Tiana her restaurant, Mr. Fenner and Mr. Fenner, because there's one who's tall and skinny, and there is one who is short and stout. My favorite versions of their caricatures of themselves are in Hercules by far. Hercules, they are supposed to be pain and panic, right? We've got one tall, skinny, one short and stout. But I also love to talk about their caricatures in Moana. They're supposed to be hey, hey, and the chicken and the pig, which I think is super cute. But yeah, so they kind of like to hide themselves in every one of their films. Alright, we've got the jacket. Let's go ahead and give him his necklace that he typically wears. He's got this necklace about halfway down in between these two little letter C shapes here. I'm starting really lightly with a big letter E shape. He's actually got, I think they're alligator teeth on his necklace. He has a bunch of them across his neck, but we're just going to be seeing two of them. So I'm adding in these big letter V's, and then tapping them at the top with a rainbow curve here. And I'll go ahead and add one on either side of that vertical guideline. And then you want to lock those teeth in first, and then lock in the rest of that necklace anywhere that you can see it. So you don't want it to be going through those teeth shapes. Now, this movie, Princess and the Frog, has one of the only princesses who is left-handed. If you didn't know, Tiana is actually left-handed. Let's go lefties. There's one more princess who is left-handed, and she is a warrior princess. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Yeah, Mulan! Mulan and Tiana are the only two Disney princesses who are left-handed. So if you didn't know, now you know. But the reason that Tiana is left-handed is actually because her voice actress is left-handed. And Nani Rose, who voices Tiana, is left-handed. So not only was she a lot of the visual inspiration for the character, but they also pulled the fact that she's left-handed and made Tiana left-handed as well. Alright, we've got the outfit, we've got most of the silhouette. Let's go ahead and actually start to work on his face here. Now, he's got these very sharp cheekbones that make him look a little bit like a skull here. I'm going to go back up to this horizontal guideline here on either side of his face, a little bit above the guideline and below it here, connecting it back down. I'm bringing out these little, like, lesser than, greater than signs, these little sideways kind of triangular shapes here. And I'm having that bottom part of that triangle shape kind of overlap that straight line that we used to bring down his jaw. Because I really want these cheekbones of his to be very prominent. That's a pretty common theme with a lot of our Disney villains. They will typically have very pointed, very prominent cheekbones. It makes them look a little bit sharper, a little bit less trustworthy. It also makes him look a little bit more like that skull shape. He kind of shares that feature with Cruella de Vil. Their faces look a little bit more like skull-like. I'll go ahead and lock in those cheekbone shapes, and then we are good to go ahead and lock in the sides of the circle to connect it back up to his hat, as well as his full jawline. Everything else we're going to be adding is going to be on the inside of that silhouette. Now, going back to talking about some more of the voice actors in this film, one of my favorite characters from this movie has to be Ray the Firefly.
Oh, yes.
I love Ray the Firefly. I think he's super sweet, super charismatic. And a lot of that charisma comes from his voice actor. His voice actor's name is Jim Cummings. And if you don't know his name, you've definitely heard his work before. He is the modern day voice of Winnie the Pooh, of Tigger, and he's the voice of Ray, of course. He's the modern day voice of Pete the Cat as well. If we have any fans of the Goofy movie in here, he is the voice of Pete the Cat in the Goofy movie. He's done tons and tons of Disney projects. Honestly, if there is a voice that you don't recognize or a voice like in the background from any Disney movie, it's probably him. I've gone ahead and added in his ears here, pulling from his cheekbones up to his hat. And now we're going to go ahead and add in his facial features here. We finally start to work on the face of this character. The place that I really like to start with is his nose. It's kind of a good anchor point for us to build everything around. It's going to be underneath this horizontal guideline in this space between that and the bottom of my circle here. And I'm going to start very, very lightly with a nice wide oval here. A nice wide, flat oval. That's going to take up quite a bit of space that we have left in the bottom of that circle here. I'll start very, very lightly with that oval, and for his nose, I'm only going to use pieces of that oval. So I'll go ahead and only lock in the sides of his nose here. So I'll just add in these two little letter C shapes, just kind of blocking in the very sides of this oval. We don't need to add too much detail to his nose here. We're just going to add in the sides of the oval, and then we'll also go ahead and give him some nostrils as well. I'm going to go right to the center here, and on either side from the bottom of that oval, I'm going to stretch up some little rainbows that kind of pull off to the sides here for his nostrils. And that is pretty much all we need for his nose. Next thing I want to work on is this nice big smile for him. He does have a little mustache on his face, so that's actually the first thing that we're going to create. Pulling from either one of those cheekbones here, those nice big kind of pointy shapes, I'm stretching across underneath that circle, a nice big U shape here. Now I'm actually going to lock this in and thicken it up because it is supposed to be his little mustache that he has on top. So this is kind of the start of his upper lip, but this is just the mustache portion. So I'm going on in, darkening this in, thickening it up so that it actually does look like a mustache, not just a tiny little straight line here. But beneath that, we're going to start to work on his smile here. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up his mouth, give him what's called an open mouth or a laughing smile. But first thing I want to do is start with that upper lip. Right underneath that U shape for his mustache, I'm going to bring down a second U shape here. Just adding a little bit of space between the bottom of the mustache and the bottom of his upper lip. For his lower lip here, since we're opening up his mouth, I'm going to create the kind of outer edge of his mouth here. So pulling from either side of that mustache, on either side, I'm kind of following the sides of his face here. Bringing down two more of those straight lines like we did to bring down his jaw. And I'll go ahead and stop it right above where we kind of curve into that curvy V shape at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and connect those two straight lines together with a stretched out U shape here, right at the bottom. Now this is his upper lip, this U curve up top, and this is going to be his lower lip. So pulling from underneath that upper lip, I'll bring down two more parallel lines here. And then one more U curve on the inside to create a little bit more thickness for those lips of his. And since we're drawing him with a nice big open mouth smile, I want to be showing off that he's got both sets of teeth showing here. So I'll go ahead right in the middle of this space and cut it in half with one more letter U shape. And he actually does have a gap in one of his teeth here, so a little bit off to the right from that center guideline. We'll just add in this little shaded in section here to show that he does have that gap in his tooth. And then we're good to go ahead and lock that into place. Now I mentioned that he has a bunch of those voodoo dolls right around in his lair of his. There's lots of little secrets kind of hidden in his lair, but there is one voodoo doll in that movie someone familiar in that cast of the Voodoo Dolls. You're probably right, it was a little scrub there. Another big thing that I love about the sort of the number friends on the other side. Now, of course, Facilier has his shadow, right? Who kind of acts as his right-hand man, kind of acts as a little bit of like a minion to help him out. When a Facilier is standing against the wall in his lair, there's a bunch of wallpaper on the wall, but wherever his shadow is standing, that wallpaper transforms from a fancy pattern into the skull and crossbones to really show that he is not trustworthy. I love when they hide little details like that. It really helps you kind of push that character a little bit. I've gone ahead and shaded in his lips here. Let's go ahead and work on his eyes. Since that hat is kind of pushing down, he's glaring at us, we're not going to be seeing too much of his brows here, just a little bit of them kind of poking out from underneath that hat band. I'm going to jump back up here, right underneath the hat band, on either side of that vertical guideline. I'll start over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to add in what looks like a little C curve here, just barely pulling down from underneath the brim of that hat. And on either side, I'll create this big rainbow curve that is mostly going to be cut off by the top of his hat here. I'm just going to be seeing a little bit of the tail end of it on the side here. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing on either side. It kind of looks like a big stretched out check mark a little bit. So starting with that little C shape and then bringing out a nice big rainbow on either side, being mostly cut off by that little hat band. Then to create his eyes, we're going to use that horizontal guideline that we added in to start with. And from those brows on either side, I'm adding in a nice big U curve. And the bottom of that U curve is going to rest right on that horizontal guideline. Now go ahead and do the same thing on either side. Nice big U shapes here for his eyes, pulling down and resting on that horizontal guideline. Now this is definitely a trust the process moment because right now he's going to look like he's seen some things, right? He's going to look like when he's getting pulled into that grave at the end of the movie, right? But we are going to go ahead and give him some pupils, really do what's called waking up our character. Now you can have him looking in any direction that you would like, but since he's kind of looking down at us, staring us down, I'm going to go ahead and add in these U shapes underneath his brows for his pupils, so it really looks like he's kind of staring me down, waiting for you to make a deal with him, right? But no matter where you choose to place his pupils, or if you want to change the shape up, you absolutely can. Just make sure that the pupils become the darkest part of your sketch. You really want to make sure that you push down nice and hard when you're coloring them in, so that they really pop off of your page. Last couple things we need for Facilier. It's a hard job of being a shadow man, so he's got a little bit of an eye bag underneath each eye here. So I'm going to go ahead and add in these little U curves here underneath each eye. And since we have the time, I'm going to take the side of my pencil and shade in his face as well as his chest here in between his jacket. Since he does have that darker skin tone, you want to take the time and just shade it in so it does look a little bit darker than the rest of his outfit. But once you add into that shading, anything else you want to add to your sketch of Dr. Facilier is considered extra credit and up to you. Maybe you want to add in a couple of those little voodoo dolls. Maybe you want to add in some little frogs jumping around in the background, right? You want to add in some little stars, like maybe Ray and I was going to say maybe Evangeline are up in the top, looking down on Facilier. But the final mark that every artist absolutely needs on their sketch is their signature. So once you're done, find a spot, sign your name, because you have just completed your very own sketch of the one and only, the Shadow Man, Facilier.